Hi, my name is Jim Gibson with Blackstone Cybersecurity. I want to talk about your strategy concerning cybersecurity and why you need a serious look at your cybersecurity strategy. Peter Drucker, a pretty famous management person. I read a couple of his books, studied them. He's excellent. He's very insightful, has a lot of ideas that I've used in running some companies in the past and being in a management position as an owner. But you know, one of the things he said, which is absolutely true, and it takes a little bit of thought, you got to think it through, and that is culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. And you know, you have to sit back and contemplate that. What is he exactly saying? And I think when it comes to cybersecurity, how that applies is, what is your culture where you work? What is the culture of the people under you? You know, and if you're the manager, if you're the leader, well, you're the one that has to set the culture. You're the one that has to determine what the culture of your company or your organization is going to be. And I think sometimes that when I talk to people, they don't understand this thing about culture. And I'll give you an example, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. I was talking to this business owner who owns a small supplier to the Defense Department. And when I was talking to him, they sat across the table from me, and there were certain requirements for those who are in the cybersecurity field. Is 800-171 NITS requirement. NITS 800-171. And I knew the person wasn't that thrilled about the requirements that the federal government was putting on them. And so how he sat across the table was the arms went like this. And I could just hear every time I talked about, you know, we need to look at policies and procedures, it was like, oh gosh, can we get this over with? This is worse than being in the dentist chair, and I really hate this, and I'm only doing it because I'm required to do it. And can we just do the minimum and get this over with? That's the attitude I got. And in reality, that's the attitude a lot of people take towards cybersecurity. They say, well, you know, no one's ever going to hack me. You know, they're not interested in my information and things like that. And I hear that all the time. And by the way, usually when I work with a company and we start identifying and keeping track of who's entering the network and things like that, they are surprised to see how often people are attempting hacks and how many people are actually getting in. But yes, they are interested in the information you have. And if you have a bad attitude when it comes to cybersecurity, your people will have a bad attitude also. And it'll just become a piece of, you know, your policies will just become a piece of document that fits in a, you know, a 3-ring binder or some fancy words that are put on a poster up on the wall that no one really pays attention to. And you're going to have some serious problems, especially as technology more and more leans towards the hackers, the ability to hack into systems. You know, in one case, I was talking to another business owner, and he was talking about the fact that he talked to his IT staff, and the IT staff recommended that he get a new firewall. Now, I applaud him that he's gotten the latest firewall, you know, the next generation firewall, and it does this and it does that. All sorts of things for him and all, and he was kind of, you know, relaxed, saying, you know, I don't need to worry about cybersecurity because I got the next generation firewall, and who in the world could possibly break into my system with the next generation firewall? And of course, I pointed out that most hacks happen inside. You know, you have an employee that's going to another business, and they're downloading your database. Or they just got mad because they didn't get the raise that they thought they should get, so they're going to put a virus in your system. Or just you know, bring a thumb drive from home with all their wonderful music and all their problems that are in there, things like that. And also, there's ways to get around firewalls. So he's not protected, but I often call these people that when I run into them, I often call them the people who are amazed by the blinking lights. They look at their data rack and they look at the blinking lights and they say, yeah, that is great. I am secure. And then they forget about cybersecurity and they walk away. And then, of course, they get hacked. And if they know they've been hacked, that's one thing. But a lot of people don't even know that there's backdoors in their systems, that they're being hacked on a regular basis, and things like that. So it becomes a cultural thing. If you as a business owner or you as a leader is not treating this as a cultural issue, that you're taking it serious and you're setting the example, then your people aren't going to take it serious either. So some see technology, some see cybersecurity as a technology problem. You know, the flashing light indicates that on the system that's sitting inside the data rack indicates that I have cybersecurity and it's acting and I can go on and do other things. But in reality, it's an attitude, and it has to have a right attitude. It's not just the equipment on the wall, it's not just policies that are written, and of course you got to have both, but it's the attitude that the person has that's in charge. Equipment and policy are really just tools. That's all they are. They're just tools to an end. But if you don't have the right policy, if you don't have the right attitude, then you're going to have some issues, and that the tools aren't going to help you. You know, I spent numerous years in the Marine Corps, and that's where I started my cybersecurity background. They called it communication security back then. I worked in a data center, worked with crypto gear, worked with all the way up to top secret information. But even more basic than that, Marine Corps people have an attitude, and the attitude is different than the other services. And I think the other services are wonderful, by the way. I worked with all of them. But they have an attitude that's different. They view the world differently. They have a culture that's different. And one of the things that you often hear is that every Marine is a rifleman. Every single officer has to learn infantry tactics. And they learn that primarily at what they call the basic school and an officer candidate school at the very beginning. But you have to know tactics because every single officer, every single Marine is first a rifleman and is also an infantry person. So that is their philosophy, and it's very well communicated that as a Marine you have certain expectations to follow, and everyone follows those expectations. And if somehow I could communicate that to businesses, that not that they need to become experts in rifle and in other things, but that they need to treat cybersecurity in such a way that it becomes a culture in the company, it becomes a culture in the business. And it's very important that you come to that conclusion, that it is just not blinking lights and it's just not a piece of paper or a poster on the wall, that this is something that's important for your business. You know, and you got to think this thing through. Are you just a manager or are you a leader in your business? And managers just go through the functions. You know, they add numbers up, how many things were shipped today, what time is this person coming in tomorrow. We're a leader, and if you're the business owner or you're the CEO of a company, you need to be the leader of that organization. You need to be the one to set the priorities, and you need to be the one to set the culture of that organization. And if you don't set the culture of that organization towards cybersecurity, then no one is going to really follow any of the rules or policies that they have. You need to set an example. You know, one other phrase I learned in the Marine Corps is that everything that happens or fails to happen as, the officer in charge, the commanding officer or whatever, is your responsibility. So you are responsible for cybersecurity. You can't delegate this to the IT staff and expect it to be done. This is something that you need to take control of. You need actually to have a cybersecurity professional. And I talked in one of my other videos about the fact that some organizations, some companies just aren't big enough for a full-time CISO. Chief Information Security Officer. He's a C-level person, or she's a C-level person. But what you can do at that level is you have what's called a virtual CISO. And that person can come in a couple hours every week, can work on projects, can make sure that things are being followed through, that you're following certain procedures and policies, and that the proper equipment is being in place. I think the worst place to be as a small company is just to follow your vendors. And don't get me wrong, I was an IT vendor for many, many, many years, and put in systems all over the United States. But sometimes, a lot of times, IT vendors will just sell you a box, and they will sell you the box that they have an agreement with the manufacturer for. And that box may not be the best box, it may not be the best thing that you need for your company, for your organization. So you have to have someone who is, like I said, a CISO, a CISO, Chief Information Security Manager, that can go in and it can help you design a system that fits your needs, but at the same time could also coach you on how to be have the proper attitude when it comes to cybersecurity. And the way I look at it too is, I do consulting, I do a lot of work with people and everything else, and I've been doing IT and cybersecurity for 39 years now. So it's a long time, and I've seen a lot. I've been in a lot of data centers, worked for a lot of big corporations, both as an employee and also as a contractor. And what I think I see a lot of cybersecurity, well, not just cybersecurity, but a lot of consultants, is they like to show off how much they know. So they kind of throw people under the bus. Ha ha ha, that IT guy doesn't know what he's doing, so I'm just going to throw him under the bus. I don't think that's the right approach. I think the right approach is being a coach, trying to help people, trying to support people, trying to support organizations to get to the level that they need to be secure. But it doesn't start with an owner with the arms crossed saying, oh gosh, I am so bored, I can't believe it. I can't believe the government is requiring me to fulfill this NIST 800-171 procedures, which, by the way, are pretty good for securing unclassified, controlled unclassified information. But these are things that you should be aware of. You need to have that attitude, and that attitude sets the culture of your company, and that's what needs to be taken care of. But at the same time, you need people who are coaching, not people who are condemning to prove how much they know. You need to bring people along, and you need to work with people to see and make sure that they understand that cybersecurity is something that's really important. And you always have to, I just want to reiterate the fact that it's not equipment and it's not policy that solves cybersecurity problems. They are tools to solve the problem. The key is having a culture of security in your organization. Just getting back to one of the discussions, I had with some business owners, and they're convinced that their IT person says, we don't have a problem. And I often hear this phrase, which is kind of silly this time in the the time in IT and the amount of hackings that are going on. And they kind of say things like, oh no, I'd be interested in hacking us. And when I hear that, I always remember the story about a psychologist, and the psychologist was counseling someone, and this person had some mental issues, obviously, and he thought he was dead. And so the psychologist was trying the hardest he possibly could to counsel this person about, you're not dead, you're breathing, things like that, you're eating, normal bodily functions are happening. And the person kept on saying, well, that can happen to dead people. And finally he said, well, do dead people bleed? And the guy thought real deep for a minute or two. And he says, no, I don't think dead people can bleed. He said, okay, well, I'm going to get a syringe here, and I'm just going to prick the end of your finger. And when I prick the end of your finger, we're going to see if you bleed. And if you bleed, you're alive, right? And the person said, yeah, I guess so. And so he pricked the finger of the patient, and sure enough, when after he pricked it, some blood came out. And the patient looked at the blood and said, wow, would you look at that? Dead people do bleed. And that's the way I think the denial is with a lot of individuals today. A lot of them in the IT field, they're in denial. Well, we'll just put a firewall there and it's completely taken care of. No, cybersecurity is really a culture, and it really starts with an attitude. And if you're the CEO, if you're the president, if you're a board member, if you're anywhere within a leadership position of an organization, it has to start with you, and you have to change the culture of cybersecurity. You have to make it a priority, and you have to make sure that you set an example when it comes to cybersecurity. Again, this is Jim Gibson with Blackstone Cybersecurity, and thank you for watching my video.